Good evening. I'd like to call to order our July 2nd, 2024 Little Rock City Board of Directors meeting. We'd like to welcome those in attendance as well as those watching at home or streaming online. Madam Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Director Miller.
Here.
Director Richardson. Director Peck. Here. Director Hines.
Present.
Director Lewis. Director Wyrick.
Present.
Director Compuris. Director Phillips. Director Adcock.
That was Director Phillips online.
Present.
Director Adcock. Vice Mayor Webb. Here. Mayor Scott.
Present. Let me now recognize our city attorney to give the invocation.
Please join me. We're coming together tonight to try to figure out things that need to be done immediately and things that need to be done in the long term. We come together tonight knowing that there are issues facing this board, facing this city, facing our citizens, facing our nation, over which we really don't have a lot of control. And that's frustrating. It's almost impossible to see a situation and be an elected official and not ask, what can I do? And then to be told, this one is beyond your abilities. What we can do is determine what things we can address, what things we can make better, what things we can find that will make citizenship in this city and tourism in this city and the members of this city far more satisfied than they are today and far more satisfied tomorrow than they were yesterday. That is our purpose. Help us to see that purpose, to listen to all of the ideas, and to accomplish all that we have the talent to accomplish. Amen.
Amen. May you please stand for a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members of the board, we will quickly go into our downtown Little Rock master plan. As you know, a little over a year ago, this city board accepted a proposal to fund a downtown master plan and other projects, other related projects with the American Rescue Plan Act dollars. This process has gone forward under the leadership of the Downtown Little Rock Partnership, Gabe Holstrom, alongside our procured vendor, Sasaki, led by the project manager, Daniel Church, who happens to be a Little Rock native. Very proud that he has that context alongside of his partners, AMR Architects, as well as CC Mercer as well, and a host of other individuals alongside of the DLRP Executive Board. We're very grateful for a little over 8 to 9 months that they put forth an effort alongside stakeholder management to get us to this point to share with you the plans that are set forth. We'll now kick it off to Daniel Church. Once he goes through that process, we'll navigate from there.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the Board of Directors for giving us the opportunity to present the plan. Let me go ahead and just share my screen and we'll get started. Y'all can see that okay?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for giving us the opportunity to talk. I've got a lot to cover, but I'm going to try to move quickly. So we definitely want to reserve as much time at the end for questions as possible. We'll talk a little bit about the planning process, how we got to what's in the plan. Then we'll talk about the actual content of the plan, the vision and the big ideas, but most importantly, implementation, because that's the most important thing, is to deliver a plan to you all that has a successful path forward. And then we'll talk about some of the next steps and where that falls in all of this. So just to refresh you all from whenever we presented back in December, the study area is a 2.5 square mile area that is bounded by the UP Railroad on the west, by Daisy Bates and 14th Street on the south, by Bond Street over on the east, and then by the Arkansas River to the north. So this is also this is an area of about 4,400 residents and about 4,100 workers. So this is the central business district, but definitely does not have as large of a population, and that's something that we're going to be talking about here in a little bit. So in terms of thinking about what is in a downtown master plan, yes, it is a vision for the future, but it should also really be a roadmap for investment, both for the public and private sectors. Something that both the public and private sides are coalesced around that shared vision, that shared set of values and goals. But what's most important is that that plan has a detailed list of projects, policies, programs, and partnerships that really lay out a roadmap for success to make that investment happen. And so some of these are strategies that are going to occur in the short term, and some of them are more long-term strategies. And we'll discuss some of those later in the presentation. So in terms of our process, we really started this process trying to learn as much about downtown as possible, having conversations with as many people as possible. That allowed us to begin to develop some ideas and concepts around what we were hearing. Those big ideas and concepts we continued to refine, and that allowed us to begin to think about specific implementation items for each of those. And that really served as a foundation for what is the implementation chapter in the final plan. In terms of the structure for the plan, implementation was at the forefront from the beginning. So the vision and the values really serve as the foundation for everything that's in the plan. There's big ideas, and then within each of those big ideas, there's a series of strategies and action items. All of those are critical to have a successful implementation. So in terms of the plan schedule, as the mayor mentioned, we started this process back in the fall. We launched in September and had public meetings starting in October, and now we're really at the end of the process with adoption. But what was essential throughout the process was engagement with the Little Rock community, since this is a plan of and for the people and the stakeholders of downtown. We had 4 different online surveys throughout the course of the process, with about 2,000 people taking those surveys. We had great attendance at our public meetings. We had 7 public meetings and 7 pop-up events scattered throughout downtown and really around Little Rock. And all of the input that we heard at those meetings shaped the content in the plan. In terms of the big takeaways, probably the first and most important is that downtown Little Rock really has an incredible geographic setting along the Arkansas River, and it is the center of the state of Arkansas, both culturally, geographically, and it's the only true urban space in the state of Arkansas. And those are strengths that you can't replicate, and those are such huge opportunities to build off of. The second, and I mentioned this earlier, is that there's not a lot of people who live downtown. So when we looked at other comparable cities like Greenville, South Carolina, or Chattanooga, Tennessee, those cities have residential densities that are up to 4 times as great as what downtown Little Rock has. So this plan really calls out a key goal of doubling the population downtown by 2035. The good news is there's a lot of opportunity for infill development. There's a lot of underutilized surface parking lots. There's vacant land. All of those are opportunities to have opportunities for investment and redevelopment in the future. And then lastly, the civic infrastructure of downtown. So that's City Hall, the Downtown Partnership, other agencies, the state, the private sector. All of those groups must coalesce around this downtown plan for it to be successful, because each one of those groups is going to be responsible for some part of the implementation. So some other big takeaways is that there's really no institutionalized economic development tools downtown. Compared to your peer cities that have TIF districts and tax abatements and other tools, Little Rock is really lacking there. I already talked about the Arkansas River as a tremendous asset. There was an expressed desire from the public to improve infrastructure, both making it easier to walk and bike downtown. People really love the events and programming that happen downtown, but they want more of them. I talked about the residential population density and needing to increase that. And that's really critical for creating critical mass, that sense of vibrancy. And that'll help change the dynamic in terms of thinking about perceived safety issues and a lack of things to do. It also drives retail and investment. The opportunity where the I-30 ramps are removed in the river market with the 30 Crossing Park is such a huge opportunity, and I'll talk more about that later in the presentation. There's an opportunity to make downtown Little Rock an epicenter of all the trails of Central Arkansas, and also make it the epicenter of history and culture for the entire state, and really let that drive placemaking and tourism. So in terms of the content of the plan itself, the plan is 206 pages, along with an appendix, 6 chapters, 4 big ideas, and 45 strategies. And so the implementation chapter really spells out specific items for each of those strategies in more detail. All of this is centered on the establishment of a key vision. And really the vision that was agreed upon by the people and by our steering committee is that downtown Little Rock is the heart of urban life for all of Arkansas. It is a safe and vibrant hub for history, culture, and activity and recreation along the banks of the Arkansas River. It's a constant pulse. Of activity that is a highly desired place to raise a family, work, and socialize because it's a diverse and inclusive collection of neighborhoods and people. So this vision allowed us to also get to key values that really served as the backbone for everything that came after it in the establishment of this plan. Downtown should be welcoming and safe, authentic and diverse, vibrant and prosperous, livable and people-focused, sustainable and resilient, and dynamic and connected. And so once we had the vision and the values in place, that allowed us to think about these big systems that make up downtown. There's mobility, there's culture, there's land use, there's the public realm. And each one of those had their own distinct elements that helped us establish 4 big ideas. The first of those big ideas is that downtown is a tapestry of neighborhoods. So this is really thinking about deconstructing the monolith of the entire area as just downtown and really breaking it into distinct districts with their own character. Important to that is going to be building those characters out in some areas where there isn't character, building out that population and residential density that I talked about, and building out the economic development tools that are going to be essential to making that happen. Rambles to the River is really thinking about downtown Little Rock as this epicenter of trails, as an opportunity and a way for the people to connect to the river and to other open space assets. And all of that should improve the quality of life for those who live, work, or visit downtown. Loop Stitch and Reconnect is about connecting people from where they are to where they want to go or where they need to go. So this is about infrastructure improvements to making it easier to walk or bike. It's about reimagining how streets function, prioritizing streets for people. It's about transit enhancements that make it easier to get around without a car. And then lastly, culture as a catalyst is really about positioning the assets that you have. You have such great historical assets, museums, institutions. All of those are located downtown, but they're not all located near each other. And so this is about physical improvements to connect those to each other, but also partnerships to enhance programming opportunities in the future. So all of this served as a foundation for really thinking about an implementation plan, specific strategies for each of those big ideas so that ultimately those can be implemented over time. I mentioned that there are really 4 Ps that serve as the foundation for this. There's projects, policies, programs, and partnerships. And we think that each of the strategies that are in the plan, all of the 45 strategies, fall within one of these different 4 Ps. Some are physical and some are more programmatic in nature. The plan also lays out a timeline or a roadmap for how and when this should be achieved. So as I mentioned, there's 45 strategies, and those obviously aren't going to all happen at once. And so thinking about what needs to happen first so that there can be a waterfall effect so that subsequent things can happen after them is critical. But the most important thing that I talked about at the beginning of the presentation is the need to create an economic incentive tool or tools to make it easier to drive investment in downtown Little Rock. And really a TIF district is such a great opportunity I'll talk about here in a moment. The plan also spells out 4 different goals for each big idea. And while the goal itself is really just a way to better understand the specific strategies and group them, what's important is measuring those goals and thinking about tracking that over time. It's going to be important for the city and for the downtown partnership to be tracking those metrics to know if you're making an impact and having a positive success in achieving the goals laid out in the plan. So the vision is as such. The pink buildings that you see are potential infill development. This isn't to say that this is exactly where development will go, but these are the opportunities that we see of really clustering and creating these new dynamic areas in and around the core of downtown. So whether it's around the 30 Crossing Park, along the river, down Main Street to West 9th Street, or over by the state capitol, each one of those areas really stood out to us as an opportunity because what we did was lay all of the big ideas on top of each other. And that really created this framework where we thought about where is there underutilized land and transportation assets and open space assets. All of those things can serve as catalytic moments to drive investment and change over time. So I mentioned some of these areas already, but we really identified 4 main focus areas: the 30 Crossing Park, the riverfront, West 9th Street, and the state capitol area. And each one of them is unique in their own way. Each one of them has opportunities for infill development. Each one of them has opportunities for public realm enhancements and ways to create each one of these as its own distinct district. And so in the plan, we speak to the specifics of that, really reimagining how the city connects to the river. A fundamental part of that was rethinking about how La Harpe functions as a street, because it really is today a barrier to accessing the waterfront. I'm thinking about opportunities for reimagining and reorienting buildings toward the river is going to be critical. The West 9th Street is such an opportunity where I-630 historically severed a neighborhood and really changed the land uses in that area. There's an opportunity to leverage the Mosaics Templars Cultural Center as a catalytic development to drive new investment and change on the corridor. Thinking about reconnecting West 9th Street back to the west over time is a part of reconstruction of I-630 in the future. Thinking about enhancements north-south to make it easier to get from Philander Smith into the core of downtown. All of those things are going to be critical. And then lastly, the state capitol area. This is obviously an area that's owned by the state. There's a lot of underutilized land over here that connects to a lot of open space, a trail network that is planned. So there's such an opportunity to leverage public land for public good. So I'm not going to go through each of the 45 strategies, but I will speak to one of the most important strategies, which is the very first one in the implementation chapter, which is to first create a tax increment financing district to incentivize investment downtown, and then second, to establish a downtown development corporation that manages that TIF district and advances other development goals. And although they are 2 separate strategies, they really are tied together because the TIF district will be critical for helping to fund the Downtown Development Corporation. So in terms of next steps, one of the things that the plan does call for is the creation of an implementation committee. We think that this is essential. This should be a group that meets regularly, probably monthly, to talk about how each one of their different agencies and groups are working to advance different items in the plan. This is a group that should be chaired by the director of the Downtown Partnership, as well as a future director of the Downtown Development Corporation, which today does not exist. It should include the mayor, the director of Ward 1, representatives from the chamber, from LRCVB and MetroPlan, and then other department directors as well. Another exciting thing that we know that is on the horizon is the release of the Downtown Master Plan RFQ around thinking about and reimagining the 30 Crossing Park, and not just the 18 acres, but reimagining that entire area and the public lands around it as an urban district. That's such a huge opportunity. That's a really great catalytic moment that I think ties so many of the strategies together. But it's not going to be it's just going to be the first of other opportunities. And so hopefully that RFQ is successful and it finds footing, And then there should be moments of future RFQs such as that in other areas around downtown. So in terms of comments from the public, whenever we put this plan out to the public back in May, we received about 110 comments, both online as well as comments received via email, as well as things that we heard from individuals at our public meetings. Generally, very largely supportive. People are very excited about the content and the plan, but it isn't to say that we got it perfect. We heard about the desire for the plan to better align with the upcoming sales tax vote in November, concerns about gentrification, concerns from the LGBT community about better speaking to them as a part of the social fabric, as well as Arkansas Rep as part of the cultural fabric, clarifying how a downtown parks conservancy might operate, thinking about the implementation committee, thinking about the design of 30 Crossing Park. So we heard a lot about that. In terms of addressing them, one of the things that we did is actually create an entirely new strategy. Speaking about the indoor sports complex that is part of the sales tax vote, that one, we see as a huge opportunity for downtown and something that has been part of our thinking as we were developing these ideas. So we added that strategy in. We also added in the opportunity for enhancing and lighting up the Broadway Bridge, because that's such an opportunity to really celebrate that, that kind of defining feature on the river. We worked with the Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau to modify one of the recommendations around tourism and promotion. We added language that speaks to gentrification and thinking about strategies to mitigate that, speaking to concerns about inclusivity of the LGBT community in the Arkansas Rep. We reimagined the recommendation around the Downtown Parks Conservancy as part of the City Parks Conservancy. We expanded the scope on some of our maps to really speak to assets that are just outside of the study area their successful implementation are going to be catalytic moments that are going to influence downtown. We reimagined the implementation committee and also simplified the design on the 30 Crossing Park, since that's something that's going to be determined through a separate design process in the future. So this plan was presented to the Planning Commission back on June 13th and received approval. And our recommendation this evening is for approval of the master plan, subject to any comments or revisions from this body. And with that, I am more than happy to answer questions.
Director Hines.
Thank you, Dan. Just a quick question on the, going back to the loop and stitch and some of those things with transportation. Has this approach all been fitted to what RDOT's doing with moving the local traffic onto the city grid at, I think, 4th and 6th Street? And then was there any exploration, since you talk about opening up the riverfront and La Harpe Boulevard is essentially a state highway, have there any conversations with the Arkansas Department of Transportation or their commissioners about that?
Yeah, so in terms of the movement of traffic along, reimagining how the city grid will function with the changes that are soon to come with the reconstruction of I-30, one of our recommendations is both 4th and 6th Street, but 4th Street is probably our priority, is that 4th Street should be a two-way street really through the entirety of downtown. That corridor is going, or could become, the primary conduit or one of the primary conduits to get people to the on and off ramps of I-30. And so reimagining the functionality of the streets is going to be essential. In terms of thinking about La Harpe, one of our recommendations, and again, this will require ongoing conversations between the city, Metro Plan, and RDOT, is for La Harpe Boulevard to be decommissioned as Arkansas State Highway 10. They are likely going to want connectivity back to the rest of their network, I-630 or I-30. And so Chester Street is an opportunity that we really call out as the movement that is going from Riverdale and points further west that are coming to get to the interstate system. The difference between going south on Chester to get to I-630 and into the interstate network or through downtown to I-30, those movements are essentially the same. And so prioritizing east-west movements as well as Chester Street is our recommendation. And what that does is it frees up Lahart Boulevard to become a city street that you have the opportunity to reimagine into not a 4-lane boulevard, but instead a quiet 2-lane road that frees up land for redevelopment and better connects the city to the river.
And I understand the plan, it makes sense, but I don't know that you guys have had much experience dealing with the Arkansas Department of Transportation, but they're a rather independent bunch. So I was just curious as to what their feedback was on that, because when they went through the 30 crossing process, Lahart Boulevard was directly taken into account, and it you know, not trying to reinvent the wheel, but I just want to make sure we're taking all that into account, because a lot of the stuff of how that whole system was designed was based on flows of that getting that local traffic onto a different connector within our city. The other question I had is, what's Plan B if we, and I'm sure you're aware that the long history of TIF districts in the state, which I know they've been utilized very well in other states, but we had a court case that basically set aside our ability to really raise many funds. I think we've had one TIF district in the city, maybe even in the state, that's utilized, and that was basically to build a road for the Bass Pro Shops development to attract them as a development. I'm supportive of doing that, but I think we need to have a plan B as to what other sources of funding, because you're talking about going to the state legislature, and I can tell you that the folks that filed the lawsuits against the original TIF districts and got that legislation potentially set aside have already been saber rattling that they will, we may find ourselves in court for a long time before we can use that TIF district, and I just wanted to, I think we would be short-sighted if we didn't look at what's the plan B if we can't get that done at the state level. And I've got no problem supporting that. I think statewide you would see a lot of support from a lot of other corners of the state that would support a TIF district that actually works, that will be constitutional in the state of Arkansas.
Yeah, so that's a great question about TIF districts. On the TIF district piece specifically, one of the things that we learned through this process is TIF districts, as you mentioned, I mean, they are permissible today. And so they're challenged by the amount of increment that they can pull because of the amount of millage they can tap into. And they're also challenged by only being able to pay for infrastructure improvements. But what we're talking about, especially around the 30 Crossing Park, is a substantial amount of just infrastructure improvements. We're talking tens of millions of dollars that a TIF district could finance, freeing up the opportunity for redevelopment by enabling reimagination of some underutilized parcels over there. That set aside, you're right. There's going to be a process to amend the state constitution and work with the state legislature. And Gabe may be able to speak better to that here in just a second. But one of the things that we do specifically call out throughout the document is, yes, TIF financing will be a great tool and it will unlock a lot of things, but there are tons of monies through federal and state grants that are opportunities to pay for public realm improvements, to pay for the 30 Crossing Park. The Reconnecting Communities grant that currently exists is a huge opportunity that should be accessed, but there's tons of federal money out there. And so we specifically call out where those grant sources are and recommend that either the city and or the downtown partnership work to pursue those, because those will be essential for success as well. Gabe, maybe you can, if you're able, I don't know if Gabe Holmstrom's in the room to answer, speak a little bit more to TIF as well.
I know he was, yeah, he's here.
I just missed the last 30 seconds. So what was the question that I can help out?
Just with the storied past of TIF districts in the state because of court rulings on constitutionality and really limiting how much funds we can raise with them, do we have a plan B? And, and I think Daniel was alluding to, there's other funds other than TIF district funds that could be utilized through federal grants, federal state grants?
I think there are a wide variety of programs that are utilized in other states. that we find ourselves in a time where Little Rock is not alone in recognizing the need for different economic development tools. So I think this is something the state is taking a big interest in and taking a look at. As specifically as it pertains to TIF, we have to look no farther than right across the river at the rock water development that's been done over in North Little Rock, and they have been able to very effectively show the impact and the success of that type of program when it's effectively and implemented in conjunction with the local school district.
Do you have any additional questions, Director Hines?
No, that's it.
Director Miller?
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor. And thanks, Daniel, for this summary and presentation, all the work you've been doing on this. You know, the one thing that this executive summary doesn't have that can't find is how much this thing going to cost. And maybe you can break that down and what can be done specifically to each focus area. But I got to have some idea of the cost of this, and it's nothing in this executive summary that talks about that.
So one of the things that, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you if you're still, if there's more.
No, that's the big question.
So one of the things that, we recommend reimagining certain streets and reconstructing certain streets, or the construction of the 30 Crossing Park. All of those come with such a wide variety of potential pricing, depending on construction cost at a certain time or what is chosen for a design. It's impossible to give a hard and fast number for even a specific strategy. But what we do in the implementation chapter is specifically call out a project as either a single dollar sign, $2 signs, $3 signs, or $4 signs, which is a very simplified way of saying there's some things that are going to be not very expensive and achievable, $1 sign, and then there's going to be very major infrastructure projects that will cost hundreds of millions of dollars potentially, like the 30 Crossing Park. That's a $4 sign project. And so we don't have specific numbers on how much all of this combined would cost, because so much of this is also contingent on an unpredictable known, how much grant is received for a certain project, or how much investment comes from the private sector. But we can work to try to provide some estimated ranges, but we don't have a hard number on that.
Well, I would certainly appreciate some estimated numbers. I think that's sort of important to have some of those dollars. Certainly, as we contemplate having the sales tax, there's certain line items in the sales tax that certainly I think could be applicable for the downtown master plan, and I want to try to get those things reconciled so I know where the gaps are with that. And so, one of the things, certainly I'd like to see that, but there are some things that we can do right now that it's not going to cost any money to do. Some things we just can do at this point.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there are policy changes that would just require staff to put forward code changes that this body would approve. So there are definitely things that are essentially free, and then others that are obviously far more expensive endeavors.
I saw one of the things, policy changes, you made reference to our structure of government. Where'd that come from? Getting rid of the at-large directors, and where'd that strategy come from?
That was just in reference to the implementation committee. It had nothing to do with the government structure of the city. It was only who would serve on that monthly meeting committee related to implementation. And so instead of having multiple at-large representatives on the implementation committee, it would just be the mayor and the director of Ward 1.
Okay, Thank you. Let me make some notes. Thank you.
Director Peck?
Well, that was pretty much my question, Virgil. But Daniel, thank you. I got to hear the big reveal, and it was the Planning Commission, and this is very exciting. But one question I had was why the city manager and the at-large director position, which I would assume would be Mr. Downtown Dean Compuris, why they're not on the implementation committee anymore. I mean, I guess at one point they were, but a decision was made to not have them there. I think you just
Yes,
answered Virgil.
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Director Phillips?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Daniel. Wanted to follow up on what Director Miller said about some changes that we can do. I think you deferred to it as free of charge. I know in the final draft plan, you mentioned some changes to our UU code as it relates to increasing residential housing downtown. Can you elaborate more on that for the board?
Yeah, certainly. So some of the changes that I'm going to say they're free because nothing's free because it would obviously be staff time. But some of the changes that we call out that are easier to achieve from a cost perspective are code amendment changes. So reimagining the UU zoning is part of that. Right now, it's got some difficult limitations that make mixed use development challenging. And so if the city desires to see redevelopment downtown, changes to the code are going to be essential in making it easier for developers. There's some other things related to things like platting and some more regulatory things that we call out specifically. That small changes like that we think can go a long way in making it easier for developers to navigate the permitting process. On the other side, another opportunity that we think is a really big opportunity for the city to consider that is also free is leveraging city-owned land that is underutilized. The city publicly owned land makes up 23% of downtown. That's not all the city of Little Rock. It's the highway department, the state, the county, the federal government, but the city of Little Rock owns a lot of land downtown, and some of that is highly underutilized. And so thinking about opportunities to offload that land through redevelopment, to get back to the previous question about if TIF doesn't work out, what's an incentive tool? One of the greatest assets that you have is that land that you could reimagine and lease off for $1 to a developer, and that changes how the financing structure of a project and makes it easier for development to occur. So that is another free strategy to essentially turn over your own land to see the outcomes that you want.
Thank you for that, Daniel. I'm supportive of that. I know there are some other conversations that have been had about particularly the parking lot on 2nd and Scott, about potentially reusing that one because that's city-owned, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And what would be your proposal on how we use that how could we redevelop that lot that's city-owned? Can you give us an example of what that could look like?
Yeah, I think an example of that.
I'll be quiet.
That's obviously so close to the 30 Crossing Park. There's such an opportunity for that to be thought of a little bit more holistically as a part of that strategy. But in terms of that piece of land specifically, it's a parking lot that is on any given day half full. So it's generating marginal revenue, whereas there's a parking garage directly next door. There's an opportunity to build mixed use development, mixed income housing. So housing is obviously a huge need downtown. You could build, 6-7 stories of apartments there, have a developer, essentially give the land to a developer for a very low fee, making it easier for that developer to develop the parcel. But then also put strings on the developer. We see this in a lot of cities where they may require a certain percentage of the units to be dedicated to be affordable. That's great because you create a mixed income community, and so you're creating a strategy of socioeconomic wealth downtown but you're also creating housing downtown. So that housing with retail on the ground level would be our recommendation.
Thank you. That's all I had, Mayor.
Director Wyrick?
Thank you, Mayor. All of my questions have been answered. I was concerned about the TIF and the cost, and then additionally, the zoning, which Director Phillips asked that question. But I do want to say that Bass Pro was a TIF district, and part of the angst, I think, was from the school district. They thought we would be taking money away from them. And if you look at it, it's got some thriving businesses on it, and it's an example of how a TIF district can work. So that would be an example to take back to those that are concerned about it. The other thing is Director Phillips brought up the zoning, the UU zoning for downtown, and I would think that we would have to have a close relationship with the owners of property in downtown Little Rock to help reimagine what would happen there. So, Daniel, I appreciate your presentation, and it's very well put together and very thoughtful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Miller?
Thanks, Mayor. Daniel, let me ask you, I'm certainly supportive of this plan. The one thing that just jumps out to me that's not addressed, and that is our unsheltered population. We have a lot of unsheltered that they like downtown. They want to be downtown. Obviously, the city's doing a number of things to address that with our micro village and some other programs that we do, our partnerships with a lot of different organizations. But we have public housing downtown. And so what type of conversations have been had with our public housing authority, the Metropolitan Housing Alliance? What do we contemplate those discussions being, or if you've had them, and then what have other cities done when they've done a downtown master plan redo? What they talk about with the unsheltered?
Yeah, that's a great comment. And, you know, the concerns about homelessness, both from, you know, a safety and visibility perspective, but also just the outcomes for those individuals is something that we heard throughout this process. And, you know, while the plan doesn't speak to any specific recommendations of we know that there's a new homelessness officer being created at City Hall, and that there's, you know, other policies and planning going into that. We didn't want to jump the gun on that. I think the number one thing that is essential that other cities are investing in is more housing available to all income bands. And so, you know, the public housing towers that you mentioned, we actually went and did a pop-up event and spoke to residents at Cumberland Tower while we were in town one time. And it was really interesting to hear their perspective, because oftentimes those are individuals who may not feel compelled to attend a public meeting, but their input is essential in the planning process. And they told us the exact same things that we were hearing from everybody else is, you know, they wanted access to a grocery store, and they like living downtown because of proximity, but it's hard to get around. And so one of the things, you know, that is going to be important as you think about the disposition of city land for mixed use development is, are there opportunities for some of that development to be, you know, affordable for very low income families? And that's something that providing those additional units that are managed publicly is essential to provide that safety net for the broader population, to make sure that they never become unhoused in the first place.
Yep. Daniel, that's great, and I'm all for affordable housing. I'm a big proponent of it. I certainly support it. I'm talking about unsheltered people. I'm talking about people who don't have any money. That's the population I'm talking about. Not people that can afford housing, not building housing for those individuals. I'm talking about the people that are straight up homeless and don't have any money. how have other cities addressed that with their downtown?
Well, I can't speak specifically to strategies that were downtown specific. There have been a whole host of strategies implemented by cities. Here, I live in Denver, Colorado, and one of the things that the city of Denver actually did was provided a universal basic income to a select percentage of people who were completely unsheltered. They gave them $1,000 a month. And what they found a year later is that over half of those people were in housing and had employment. And so giving them the resources financially to get started was essential. Other cities have invested heavily in other social services, whether it be workforce development programs or but really one of the most important things is access to housing seems to be the most important strategy to solving the problem, to getting people back on their feet so that they can establish an income and have a place that they call home. That's kind of the fundamental foundation for solving the problem. But addiction issues and providing resources for care of mental health and addiction is obviously critical too.
Director Pegg, then Director Phillips.
Sorry to keep beating a dead horse, but back to the implementation committee. I feel really strongly that the city manager needs to be part of this, and really all three of the at-large directors. They're elected by the whole city, if not all three, at least one, and of course Director Miller. So not really understanding why the city manager seems very essential and very obvious. So that's just my 2 cents, but it seems wrong not to have them on the implementation committee. I don't know how.
Understood. And if that's something that this body thinks is important, then and recommends to be approval subject to, then we are more than happy to make that change.
Director Phillips. And
Thank you, Mayor.
before we get to that, Gabe Holstrom, if you'll address, I think, since it's been asked multiple times, I don't think Daniel's answer has answered the board, so you'll share.
As far as it pertains to
The implementation group.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had, we started with a list. I mean, again, it would be great for everybody in this room to be a part of this, but at some point, decisions are going to have to be made in a smaller setting and then presented to this body. So this gives us a starting point, just like so many of the topics in the plan. I mean, we're talking about La Harpe. Is La Harpe going to go from 4 lanes to 2 lanes tomorrow? Not without a lot of discussion. The same goes for what that implementation committee looks like. So I think I wouldn't get hung up on that. We could talk about that and figure out the best way to set that up. But ultimately, we had to have a starting point, and that's where we were. But you guys are going to be in charge of setting what that committee looks like, and then I'm just happy to help be a part of it.
And with anything, and this came up on a number of different public meetings. You got 20 people working for the city, at least 20 people working for the city of Little Rock. I'm probably over-exaggerating, but you got 5 to 6 department directors. You have a mayor, irrespective of whether it's me or someone else, who is the CEO. You have the Ward 1 director that's directly reflected to Ward 1. And at the end of the day, it's a working meeting. And it's sometimes when you have more than 2 city directors in a meeting, it becomes public. And then not that anyone wants to avoid public stuff at all. As you know, working meetings, people tend not to share as much if they feel like they're going to be quoted in the newspaper. And that's just being very frank. But we can have a board meeting every Tuesday about the implementation of this, which is perfectly fine. But as the person who appoints all work task force commissions and boards and listening to the feedback from those that we pay for this, there's no need to have 5 sitting directors. I guess 4 city directors on them.
What about the city manager?
You got 5, the city manager or myself. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, I'm the leader. City manager's there. She's going to be the acting city manager is going to be involved no matter what. but you got 7 department directors. At the end of the day, when it comes to something operational, if I don't know the answer and the acting person doesn't answer, we're gonna ask those individuals anyway, and they're part of the process. At the end of the day, you got 15 people. It's not you guys gotta approve anything at the end of the day. That's the process that many other cities follow. That's what we plan to follow.
And I'm particularly excited to see all of this.
All the interest, yeah.
Excitement about participating and implementing this plan.
And I must add that you also have Director Compuris, who's on the executive committee of the Downtown Little Rock Partnership. You got Director Phillips, who has a Downtown Development Commission. Everyone's involved. Director Hines?
Well, I can only speak for myself, and I think maybe talking about Director Peck, but at the end of the day, this board only has 2 employees, the city manager and the city attorney. And to not have a city manager representing this board's interest as an employee there, to me, seems amiss. And
We can add the city manager. That's it's
right.
definitely
And I
not
would
an
just
issue.
say that an at-large director is pretty warranted as well. But I don't think we should be able to go into these meetings and do whatever we want, regardless of the press is there, because they need to be open, clear, and transparent. So
We clearly want that, but you all know we have to make certain that we're gonna have more than one person. We gotta give more than 2 hours notice. You get scaled up and come. We know that that's how we gotta abide by for you. We're gonna abide by for you. At the end of the day, we're not gonna not abide by for you. If the board would like the city manager on it, that's not an issue either. And at the end of the day, the board's resolution is not about the implementation group, about the master plan. That's what's up for it. And we want to always work well with the city board. That's not an issue. But we also can't have the entire city board on the committee. So we'll add this. We can add the city manager. That's not an issue at all either. The acting city manager. All right, Director Phillips.
Okay, Mayor, I think Vice Mayor Webb had her hand up before. You can go to her, then I'll go
I
last.
apologize. Vice Mayor Webb.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Daniel and Gabe. As I've been trying to go through the document, if we have questions after tonight, should we direct those to you, Daniel, or to Gabe, or to whom?
Yeah, that's a great question. We at Sasaki are happy to answer those. Feel free to direct those to us. It probably makes sense to include Gabe Holmstrom on that communication, unless it doesn't seem relevant to his work. But more than happy to answer any specific questions you may have.
Thank you.
All right, Director Phillips. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to be clear on the process as it relates to this. Will we have a resolution at some point soon for us to adopt the master plan? I know there's questions about the implementation and who needs to be on the committee, but I think you said that's a separate issue. But if the board's gonna have a resolution, or I guess I would suggest that we have a resolution. I've been involved with Daniel and his team and Gabe and his team in a lot of different variety of ways. And I think this master plan puts the city on the right foot on being everything we thought it could be, especially downtown. So if we weren't planning to do that, Mayor, I would suggest that we have a resolution for the board to consider in adopting the master plan.
We'll work on the resolution similar to what the planning commission had.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
And members of the board, the planning commission overwhelmingly approved, just for your awareness. And at the appropriate time, you can't have an implementation group until after the master plan. We'll make certain that the city, acting city manager's on there. All right. Madam Clerk, if you'll read the consent agenda, unless there's any more questions. Any more questions? Director Miller, Director Peck, Director Compuris, Director Wyatt, Director Adcock, Director Hines, Lewis, Vice Mayor Webb. That's why I go around.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a question. I need to make a motion before we read the consent agenda, if everybody.
Oh, yes. Oh, and I'm sorry, actually, Director, well, do yours, then we'll go to Director Peck. She has something she wants to.
Oh, me first. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Yes.
Is this what you told me earlier?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, please. We are going to be reading a proclamation here at the end of the month, but I wanted just to mention, excuse me, that the city sustainability office has a plastic-free July awareness campaign to encourage everybody to think outside the plastic water bottle and reduce our plastic consumption, especially single-use plastics like bottles of water. So it's a fun challenge. There's a checklist and chances to win plastic-free prizes. You just need to go to the city's website, littlerock.gov, to get more information. It's right there on the homepage, and take a look at the initiative, and I hope you get involved. And we will, again, be reading a proclamation about this at the very end of the month.
Thank you so much, Director Peck. And thank you for being on the Sustainability Commission. Vice Mayor Webb.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to make official notification to add the following items from the May 21st, 2024 board meeting to the July 16th, 2024 agenda to rescind the vote on Z9656A, Z9656B, Z9741, Z9962. All four applications failed, and with this official notification, I'm making the motion to add to the next agenda to rescind the vote.
Second.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda consists of a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Travelers Insurance Company in the amount of $2,156,582 for property and casualty insurance for city buildings and structures and for other purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Safety National Casualty Corporation for excessive workers' compensation for 1 year effective July 1st, 2024 to July 30th, 2025, and for the purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with R. Valadez Construction Incorporated in amount not to exceed $63,027.67 for the Kavanaugh Boulevard and University Avenue Drainage Improvement Project and for the purposes, funding from the limited tax general obligation capital improvement bonds. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with R. Valadez Construction Incorporated in amount not to exceed $73,432.80 for the David O. Dodd Drainage Improvement Project and for the purposes, funding from the limited tax general obligation capital improvement bonds. A resolution to amend Little Rock, Arkansas, Resolution number 15,708 of June the 1st, 2022, to authorize the city manager to increase the contract with Redstone Construction Group in amount not to exceed $65,000 for the Swaggerty Branch Drainage Rehabilitation Project and for other purposes, funding from the 3/8 cent capital improvement sales tax. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Little Rock School District to continue a school resource officer program for the 2024-2025 school year beginning July 1st, 2024 and ending June 1st, 2025. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Pulaski County Special School District to continue a school resource officer program for the 2024-2025 school year beginning July 1st, 2024 and ending June 1st, 2025, and for other purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Doing Construction Incorporated in amount not to exceed $1,500,000 for the construction of the Little Rock Micro Home Village Community Center to be located at 3405 West Roosevelt Road and for the purposes, funding from the American Rescue Plan Act. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Carson and Associates in amount not to exceed $700,000 for the renovation of the Southwest Community Center and for the purposes, funding from the American Rescue Plan Act. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with RPPY Architects to provide architectural services for the Little Rock District Courts Building and the Little Rock Police Department Property Room to be located at 700 West Markham Street and for the purposes, funding from the limited tax general obligation capital improvement bonds. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract extension with the Peter Damon Group in amount not to exceed $24,000 to provide federal government relations and consulting services and for the purposes. That concludes the consent agenda.
Move for the adoption of the consent agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. We'll now go into citizens commu, in an effort, we'll now go into citizens communication. I'll talk with the city attorney. We'll first go with, Annie Robinson. Board members, after Ms. Robinson, without objection, do you mind me going straight to item 12, and then we'll come back to citizen communication so it can all shift to the end? Just any objection from board members? All right, thank you, Ms. Robinson. You'll go, and then we'll do item 12.
No.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor Scott and board. Concrete broke backyards and fences caving in drainage ditch between 6009 and 6023 Butler Road. Seawater incoming hole 357 and some at 36 Allison Circle, falling in drainage. I've been calling since February 5th. I keep the ditch clean. Help me with this so I can get in safely. They say they don't do that kind of work anymore, or they don't have opportunity, or they got it on the book. I live in Southwest Little Rock. Thank you for your help and allowing me this opportunity to speak. Have a good night. May I show you pictures of how the ditch is looking?
If you can, do you have them passed out?
I have them with me to pass out. This one right here.
If you'll just give it to the clerk right here, this young lady right here. Thank you so much. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item number 12 for the first time.
An ordinance to grant a franchise to 1424 on Main LLC for the use of the right-of-way located at 1424 South Main Street, Suite 101, Little Rock, Arkansas, for an outdoor dining area and for the purposes first reading.
We suspend the rules and place on second reading.
Second.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Second reading.
An ordinance to grant a franchise to 1424 on Main LLC for the use of the right-of-way located at 1424 South Main Street, Suite 101, Little Rock, Arkansas, for an outdoor dining area. Second reading.
We suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Third reading.
An ordinance to grant a franchise to 1424 on Main LLC for the use of the right-of-way located at 1424 South Main Street, Suite 101, Little Rock, Arkansas, for an outdoor dining area. Third and final reading.
Members of the board, we've now had 3 readings. Are there any questions? Any questions? Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. We'll now go back to citizens communication. Mr. Byron Norwood. Mr. Norwood. Mr. Norwood. Mr. Norwood. All right, we'll now go to Mr. Philip Bryant.
Greetings, Mayor, and greetings to the board, and greetings to all my fellow citizens. I gave a piece of paper, 2 pieces of paper there. One of them is 4 representatives of the state of Arkansas is trying to get a national law passed that the homosexual flag cannot be flown at the VA hospital or no place in the United States of America. And the other letter, you can read it when you get home or whatever. But anyway, on 12th and Main and 13th and Main, it's a homosexual flag all the way across the street. And that flag represents corruption and destruction and putting forth the effort to start a civil war. The last flag that was flown was in 1858, 1859, was the rebel flag when the southern states succeeded and they flew a flag to represent their states. Once they lost the war and was brought back to the United States, we only have one flag that represents everybody in this country. We just had a pledge to that flag, and we military men, we salute that flag. And I'm asking, who authorized to put a homosexual flag in the middle of Main Street to represent a minority of people when all you people were elected by a majority vote, not by a minority? And that flag represents destruction to this city and to this country. Another thing about that flag says grown homosexual men have a right to rape our 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14-year-old boys and get away with it. That flag also says grown homosexual women have the right to rape our 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old girls and get away with it. And I'm saying that's against the law, and we got to put a stop to it. And I'm asking the mayor right now, is he gonna get that homosexual flag up out of Main Street? Because it does not represent the majority of the people of this city. Is that flag coming up out the street, yes or no? I'm asking you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Brown, we don't respond during these meetings.
Sir?
We do not respond during these meetings.
Okay, that's all right. As you know, Thursday is the 4th of July. And the 4th of July, we celebrate 1776 of starting a new nation. And this flag here has represented everybody all the way up to this day. And for another flag of destruction to start to be flying around this city or in this country, it is a disgrace to God, disgrace to the people that live here in this country. So I'm gonna suggest in the morning you call the city street people and have them to fix Main Street back like it was before that homosexual flag was put
Mr.
down.
Bryant, your time is up.
Well, I hope you got the message. God bless you. And I hope you stand up for what's right in this city.
Bryant, your time is up.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless you. You gonna do right or do wrong?
Calhoun Clark, Mr. Clark, Calvin or Calhoun Clark.
Hi, thank you, Council, for your time. I have some educational materials I'd like to pass on to the clerk that also has my contact information available. I'm an organizer for a local animal protection organization here in Little Rock, and I have lots of friends that work in the city. I'm here to express my concern about an animal cruelty that is being caused by the sale of a bizarre product within city limits. The product I'm referring to is called foie gras, which is French for fatty liver. It comes from ducks and geese. Ducks and geese are amazing animals. Geese are good parents. I've watched a family of geese where the two parents have protected their fluffy yellow goslings recently. They stick together even during migration. They talk to their young with different vocalizations to tell them what's going on around them and to warn them of dangers in their environment. Foie gras deprives these birds of all their natural familiar instincts and bonds and reduces them to objects. To produce foie gras, workers ram pipes down the throats of male ducks twice each day, pumping up to 2.2 pounds of grain and fat into their stomachs, or geese 3 times a day, up to 4 pounds daily in a process known as gavage. The force feeding causes the birds' livers to swell up to 10 times their normal size. Many birds have difficulty standing because their engorged livers distend their abdomens, and they may tear out their own feathers and attack each other out of stress. The places where foie gras is produced are basically like puppy mills for birds. I've shown pictures and videos to Little Rock residents of where foie gras is produced, and they've been horrified. Foie gras is banned in the city of New York and the state of California. Production of foie gras is banned throughout the entire countries in the United Kingdom, Argentina, Australia, Israel, and India. After I found out about how cruel this product is, I decided to start doing outreach to educate the general public in Little Rock about this horrific product and efforts to defund animal cruelty towards ducks and geese. To my surprise, I've encountered many Arkansas duck hunters who have expressed their disbelief and opposition to the cruelty that is foie gras. Most people I talk to on the street don't know what foie gras is, just like I didn't for many years. I think it's reasonable to say that the sale of foie gras does not make up any significant portion of the business of the 2 restaurants that sell it out of 200+ restaurants in Little Rock. They aren't going to go out of business or suffer any significant loss of business if the council makes a compassionate decision to prevent the sale of this cruel product within city limits. As a representative of all Little Rock residents who have reached out to me over the past few months and voiced their opposition to the sale and production of the diseased duck and geese livers, foie gras, I'm asking the honorable council today pass an ordinance.
Sir, your time is up.
The sale of
Sir, your
foie gras
time is
in
up.
city limits. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Huffman?
Evening, everyone. So tonight, I am speaking on behalf of Autumn Parks. We have found out some new information about them. Work permits have not been pulled for any repair work since 2009. The landlord does not register any of his rental properties with a business license and does not pay taxes. Code enforcement did find 21 code violations between 2 of the apartments, and the manager still has not fixed any of them. But even when code enforcement does do their job and sends them to court, the landlord doesn't even show up because he just doesn't care. These slumlords make too much money to care. Our current efforts are not enough. We have to do more to make them listen. Please help us with this. We need action. We need to start putting liens on these properties because there's too many people still living in these conditions. There's 2 gentlemen that I have come across that one of the gentlemen, he was up here last month, and the issues in his apartment are still not fixed. The manager has not done a thing. Then we have an 81-year-old Navy veteran that is in a wheelchair that is not being treated well either. He's got mold. His front wall is deteriorating. There's nothing being done in his apartment. The man, we have to help these people, guys. We really do. And it's breaking my heart that these people are not getting help. I urge you guys, please, please, especially please help these 2 gentlemen because of the fact it hits way too close to home for me. You guys have heard my voice. You guys have seen me every month for over a year and a half. I don't make things up. Please, please, just help these people. That's all I ask.
Thank you. Sarah Black.
Hi, my name's Sarah. I'm 36. I'm a single mom of 2 kids. I moved back here during COVID. I have also experienced a lot of trouble with property management. My home is owned by Evernest originally. They sold my home in the last year for $10 to American Avenue for just a similar property management. They're all one big umbrella. I have 2 little girls. My HVAC goes out every summer. They send unlicensed techs out. It takes multiple times to get it fixed. I have to get a hotel or stay with my sister, my only living relative, to be able to work because I work in home in tech. I moved here back from California so that I could provide a better life for my children after leaving my abusive marriage. And they're just living in a house that's not acceptable. It's obviously not up to code. All the repairs were done really poorly. When they redid my lease, I have all these clauses and conditions saying basically anything that they repair, they're gonna charge me between hundreds to $3,000 for an HVAC repair because it could be my fault. I have literally nightmares at night that something will go out in my house and I'll have to call to get it repaired, and they'll find a way to kick me out of my lease so they can continue to raise their rent. I'm being charged a pet rent where I don't have a pet. I used to help my stepdad do flooring when I was growing up. I've never seen floors this poor. I don't have base floors, and this crappy vinyl siding from Ollie's is coming up. Like, I'm making all this money and paying all these taxes, and I just can't seem to get myself any better. I pay only $200 less a month than I paid in California now after the 4th rent raise, and I don't even have a parking spot. I just wanted a safe house and a yard for my kids, and it took 2 maintenance requests and multiple trips just to get my back fence repaired so that my home could be secure for my children. And again, when it gets hot and we have a heat wave in the summer, I'm worried every day. It affects my mental health, my work life. And again, like, if my computer melts because my HVAC goes out, I cannot do my job. I cannot work. So we have the worst renters' rights in the country, in Arkansas, and we live in the most beautiful state. California doesn't compare to what it looks like out here. We will never attract new people, and people like me who make a decent living, who pay taxes, will leave if we don't fix this. I will move. I've already been looking into Hot Springs. I can't live like this anymore. So please hear me and my other citizens about how bad the rental system here is. We have to stop these out-of-state crooks from taking our money. I paid more in rent than my house was bought for at this point. They didn't offer to sell me my house. They sold it for $10. I could fix it myself, but I'm not allowed to in my lease. I'm not allowed to do barely anything, and I'm scared all the time. Thank you.
Arvis Thomas.
Hello, I am speaking on behalf of the living conditions at Autumn Park Apartments in Southwest, 43 Warren Drive. I recently had to go ahead and move 3 months ago because the conditions were not taken care of, and they was raising the rent and everything. Some of the things that was going on, the communication with the landlords were not good. They just had, it was hard to get in contact with. You have to send an email and wait for that email, and a lot of times it was not directly. The paying of the rent, it just was not easy for some reason. It wasn't like you got a copy of, after you gave them your money, you didn't get a receipt and everything. You just have to make sure you pay it the ways they wanted to. But the washer and dryers for months had not been fixed right, and it was just horrible. And that's part of the rent that you were paying to have washer and dryers in the laundromat that they had. The enforcement of laws, or excuse me, the rules wasn't good because they said no pets, but there was pets all around. And then the trash areas constantly was neglected. They got a pickup as normal, but it was like just piled up all the time. And it's like they couldn't get it, emptied out extra. But anyway, it was just bad. So I actually had to move, especially when they decided to raise the rent for a second time. And this was just like recently after they had, I guess they came up, the company that bought it came along, stuff just started going down from there. So it was very horrible, so I had to leave. So, but I was just here to speak on behalf of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Charles Wilson.
Hello, this is a petition stating those facts are true from the residents of Autumn Park. There's 37 signatures on that. I'm here to discuss the current rental situation that's plaguing our city. 3 minutes is not near enough time to actually go through with everything that we've discovered over the past few months. On the eve of our nation's celebration of freedom from tyranny, the people of Little Rock are not free from corporate landlords. They threaten and harass tenants across the nation, but they're especially harsh to the people of Little Rock. That is directly related to the lack of protections being put in place by our elected officials. State Act 1052, passed April 29, 2021, granted local governments the ability to impose more strict housing standards. I appreciate that the City of Little Rock has implemented a rental inspection program. American Avenue LLC, my current property manager, is associated with SFR3 and are currently facing legal action in almost every state they conduct business in. These are not small suits. These are class action lawsuits and actions brought upon by the state attorney generals. They own 114 rental properties here in Little Rock. Nationwide, they manage $2.5 billion worth of real estate. There is no excuse that they cannot be in compliance with the applicable laws. To prevent further damage to the infrastructure of the City of Little Rock, I have 3 demands that must be addressed immediately. First, a special task force or committee needs to be appointed or elected to bring these structures into compliance with the authority to seize or issue writs of garnishment to collect the fines that have already been imposed upon these structures and repair the life and safety violations that exist. An emergency ordinance needs to be passed, including, maybe not limited to, rental abatement for any dwelling unit associated with that does not have a valid certificate of compliance in accordance with Municipal Code Chapter 8-579, and an amendment to the recently passed Tenants' Right Ordinance, including protection from landlord retaliation for a tenant exercising their right to live in a safe structure as long as that results in a failure. That's all I have.
Stacy Majors Light.
Hi, good evening. Thank you all for the opportunity to talk to you this evening. Want to especially thank Mayor, Vice Mayor Webb, and the directors for your discussion last week at the board meeting regarding the changes that are being proposed for STR2 or short-term rental ordinances. It's a very personal issue to me. I have lived in Hillcrest for 25 years and was very excited recently whenever the house next door to me, which has been utilized as an apartment, multiple apartments for the whole time I've lived there, was renovated, and with the understanding that it would be used as an ongoing long-term rental property. And unfortunately, the owners of the property have transformed those apartments into short-term rentals and have not gone through the appropriate process with the city to get the approval to do that. It's raised quite a few issues, I think, for me personally and for the people in our neighborhood, and I know this is an issue that is important to other people in other areas of the city. I personally experienced a lot of really uncomfortable and unfortunate circumstances with the people that have been staying in those apartments. Vice Mayor Webb made some reference to those last week, and I will not repeat those. No one should have to deal with those. And also, some of my neighbors have had some very unfortunate incidents with them, and we are very concerned about how those are going to be regulated going forward. It's also a concern because it's fundamentally changing the nature of the neighborhoods in our community. Hillcrest especially is a very unusual neighborhood, the historic nature of it, and it feels like that it's gone from being a residential friendly home place to mostly commercial, where people are more concerned with your ability to do things to make money and at the cost to the residents that live there who pay their taxes on the properties long-term. They're the people who support the community by shopping in the community, participating in activities in the community. Again, I appreciate the thoughtful discussion that was had last week by the board, and I just would ask that you consider to take those issues into consideration as you move forward with changes to those ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Byron Norwood. Mr. Byron Norwood. Mr. Byron Norwood. Members of the board, we've now had all of these citizens' communication. We'll now transition to our sales tax discussion. Ashley, if you would pass out, members of the board, we sent you all, directors, all of you all sent a myriad of questions that was sent to you via email this morning. that were answered. Want to give time to discuss if you have any additional questions there.
Vice Mayor has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm paying attention to Ashley. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. Before we transition to this discussion, I just wanted to make a brief comment. As an elected official, as a proud American and Arkansan, and as a proud Little Rocker, and as someone who is a member of the LGBTQ community, I wanted to publicly thank SOMA for the newest artwork, including the flag, which represents inclusiveness. And again, I think it's important to thank them, and that inclusiveness is important not only to people who are from the LGBT community, but to many residents of Little Rock. So thank you, SOMA.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor Webb.
Ditto.
All right. As it's being passed out, members of the board just want to share that appreciation for responding to the request for questions. I know we spent some time Tuesday before last when we had a detailed presentation from each department director that represented the 4 Ps. So we spent about an hour and a half that Tuesday. We did not get the opportunity to go in detail with these questions this past Tuesday. You now have these responses for you, and again, you'll take clearly I know we sent it around 11:30 or noon today. People are busy, so I know you may not have been able to go through it, but I'm sure you guys got certain specific things that you're concerned about, but also want to make certain we have those questions. But I'll go through individually to make sure we get everything addressed. I think question number 1 from Vice Mayor Webb, she had a number of questions that represented some questions from your constituents that you shared, Director Webb. And so first and foremost, are there new totals adequate for public safety? The answer is yes, which is that, and the new total is that increase. As we shared, we had about 20 million that we redirected. We put about 10 million to public safety fleet, and the other 10 was split between infrastructure. And so the updated totals, which is online, if we need to refresh your memory, we can get that, but you all have that document. If we need to resend that out to you, we've given it to you a couple different times. Is the 8 million still an accurate number for the West Little Rock Fire Station? The answer is yes. And again, this ties into the American Rescue Plan Act money that was spent to build the station. C, what is the exact breakdown of community-oriented policing? Very detailed question. Basically, currently, the department has 3 community resource officers, but with the passing of the sales tax initiative, the number of personnel will grow to 15. You guys can read the rest as it relates to that you have. Any questions about the Real-Time Crime Center? Director Webb, a lot of these are your questions, so you got any questions on the responses?
Mayor Scott, and I apologize, I do have one question.
Sure.
It was my understanding that when we talked about an increase last year for salaries, it was important to our police department that we stay #1 in the state as a way to attract more officers. And so on that first question about are the new totals adequate for public safety, I have seen articles in various newspapers that cities in Northwest Arkansas and the state police and others are giving raises. So I wonder, are we still at the top in terms of salaries? And if we're not, where are we? And do we have adequate funding to get back to the top if we're not? So
Couple of different things. I'll ask Chief Eldon to briefly come up. The answer is, I think technically state police is a little bit higher than us, maybe about $1,000, $2,000. We are depends on point in time. When we passed it, we were the top in the state municipally, but we're also under a 2-year contract as well. So that happens. So if somebody did $1,000, that may be possible, but when we last signed our contract, we were the top municipal organization. State police was a couple thousand over us. And again, state police and us are two totally different things.
Correct.
Correct? Is that the answer?
Yeah, pretty much. So we were the highest paid municipality in the state. We are no longer in that category anymore. We are probably closer to number 5, if not, I don't know if we are still in the top 5 in the state. A lot of agencies have caught up with us. Cities and municipalities have jumped us. So we need to remain competitive. Mayor's heard me say that. I think I've pretty much made that clear to members of the board as well. We have to remain competitive in order to attract officers and men and women to our organization. That's just the nature of the game right now. So that's something we're definitely going to have to do.
And I want to remind the members of the board, we just gave the police officers a historic 7%, 7.2, 7.3%, maybe 7.5.
That was close to that.
Yeah, close to that. We do our fair share now. There may be some cities with a population of 20 to 50,000 that eclipsed us, but it's 2 different cities. But we will always remain competitive, but we are under contract for the next 2 years. Next, all right. Any more? Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
And Chief, if you'll give me that exact number, and whoever's ahead of us, I want to know the population, because I bet you it's some smaller. Well, clearly they're smaller than this, but.
Yes, sir, will do.
Number of questions about fleet. Willie addressed that 2 weeks ago. You also have all the fleet questions in the spreadsheets before you. Any questions? I'm addressing.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just so I'll know what we're expected to do. Unfortunately, when I got this, I've got a day job that I was doing.
No, you're not.
So we're going to have time to really go home and digest it, then come back and.
Yes. But the point of the matter is, everyone, we do have a timeline. We've had 7 community meetings. This is now the 3rd week that you guys had the plan. Grateful to have all these questions. We provide all the information. As you know, anytime we provide any new information that goes on the website, we got so much detail on the website already. This will be additional detail on the website. We will make certain the residents see everything that's going on with this. We do have a timeline. If we want to be successful, and based on the questions that you all are asking and the needs that we all know we need to do, it would be great to pass this, take this to get it on the ballot by July 16th, meaning that we put it on the July 9th agenda meeting. And we can always modify and get it on July 16th. But the question is, and if you guys don't want to do it, then we may have to decide not to do the sales tax. So, but we need to know, because we got about the timeline to educate. So I really want you all, it's been 3 weeks now. We got questions answered. The real question is, do you all want to make any changes to the numbers? None of these questions constitute changes to the numbers. If not, we can move things forward and continue to answer questions. Vice Mayor Webb, your hand's still up.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. And like Director Compuris, I didn't have a chance to go through everything before the meeting, but there are 2 things on the affordable housing page that I just want to draw our attention to. And as you know, I missed the Ward 3 meeting because I had COVID, but I have been talking to my neighborhood associations a lot. And on the affordable housing question about the current sales price points, I visited with residents of Ward 3 from one of my neighborhoods who are very happy that we're doing more in affordable housing, but they told me they couldn't afford that. This was a price point they couldn't afford. And I think we all need to think about that. And some of them work for the city. And then on the question E on number 3, where it said we have a shortage of 25,000 units, I mean, I'm sorry I didn't know that number 6 months ago, and it's my fault for not pursuing that sooner. But I think as we contemplate making changes in the numbers, that's a number that I would like to look at. But again, like Director Compuris, I'm going to need to go home tonight and spend some time delving into the answers. So to Ashley and everybody who worked to get these, thank you.
And Director, and I don't know what the price point is, Director Vice Mayor Webb, the city of Little Rock, we already do affordable housing. Director Miller and I were just at an affordable housing event. We've done 154 times. This is a direct response to your question regarding affordable and workforce housing. Those who are eligible for true affordable housing being low to moderate income, which depending on who you say, what that exact four-family whole household, I believe Director Miller he deals with this day to day. So I'll let him share that number. But anyone who qualifies, they have an opportunity to get from the housing neighborhood programs right now. That these dollars will be in addition because we know there's about a 40% gap of individuals of what we would call that may not be technically, as it relates to HUD, low to moderate income. They may be called working poor, and they may make $2,000 or $3,000 more than the income amount, so they can't qualify for HUD. So this gets us to that gap, and that's referenced in this standpoint. I think even in the question, this helps those that we may have police officers who can't meet the affordable housing term, but they can meet this from a workforce standpoint. So it actually adds on to that. So for that individual, please let's get them tied in with Brian Catino and Tracy Shine and Kevin Howard. We can get them a house now. Director Miller, you want to educate us?
No, it's not much education. I think you did that justice. But certainly affordable housing is when someone's not paying more than about 33 to 40% of their income towards the total housing expense. And so, we're certainly looking at some public-private partnerships, some individuals or organizations, some community development corporations that build the houses that are affordable, that people don't have to pay 50%, 60%, 70% of their income towards housing. And so when we talk about affordability, how much of your income is going towards your housing costs? And that's generally been around 33%, maybe go up to about 40, but it's not more than that. So when we talk about affordable housing, these houses certainly are being a price point around less than $200,000 or so. But workforce housing is certainly different than that. Affordable housing, workforce housing, two different things. But when we talk about affordable, how much of your income is going towards the housing costs? And no one wants to, from a HUD definition, say pay more than 33% of their income towards housing, total housing.
No, thank you.
PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I also want to recognize Director Lewis, who's also a housing expert as well. I don't want to leave her out. Two bankers and a former banker. Any questions regarding, again, I know you all have time to review it, but we got to keep it steady if you guys want to do a sales tax. Any questions about War Memorial? Some of this is pretty self-explanatory, but I just want to make certain. And also, members of the board, there were some questions, Vice Mayor Webb. Any more detail that you will want in response to the questions regarding the indoor and outdoor sports complexes? We have, as you all know, SFC did a study for us, and that's all online as well. And I believe that study, Leland, that's about 50 pages, 80, give or take 50 pages. So any more detail folks want about the indoor sports complexes online? Leland, if you'll come up, if you'll address some of the parks, some of the that's always of interest, Reservoir Park, Hyman Park, Union Park. Yes, ma'am. Union Park. Let's address that.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. I'll be happy to go down each question, but you started off with.
No, just those, 'cause they got it in
Moral.
front of them, but yeah, I'm just trying to spark discussion.
Yeah, right. So some of these are hard to answer in terms of where we are in the process of the project, or if we haven't started the project, let's say. So for example, Hyman Park, we're currently starting a master plan process for that park in August this year, and we'll start with public meetings at the clubhouse. And we have a whole layout that I could go into extreme depth in, but the goal is to further our master plan, which we would be able to use for the sales tax, or other grants or other funding sources. War Memorial would be the same. If we were able to pass the sales tax, War Memorial we would go into a master plan process. We have completed to date a new conceptual vision plan for the park, but the next step would be asking the citizens how they see that. I think there were a lot of little detailed questions about, like, how do we see kayaking in the park? I believe I mentioned that at one of the many public meetings in the past. So there's plans to develop future water bodies that are bigger, and we're not talking about like whitewater kayaking or anything like this. This would be kayaking so you could fish and enjoy the water. But those are just some of the ideas or ways that we would go through many of these projects. I would like to state some on the community centers. The number there for the community centers is actually a little bit over where we are on the sales tax. I believe in the sales tax, we have $8 million allocated for community centers. So somebody would maybe study that tonight and say, wow, well, why are we at this number? These numbers fluctuate. You wouldn't believe it, but on a daily basis. I was told about a $100,000 air conditioner at Jim Daly today that needs to be replaced. So every moment it changes. We do a new project and we start working on a roof. And these are because we have the ARPA funds, thankfully, that we're currently working on some projects. And when we start to work and tie into these existing facilities, we see additional costs. How would we go about this? We would change our engineering or our plans slightly to address that. This is what we do every day when we go through projects. It's not unheard of. And so many of these projects are always evolving. West Central Sports Complex, we have $1 million, thankfully, from y'all to do the ball field upgrade. We decided to do that on one field. We're completely renovating that entire field. And, you know, as we look at the number, well, now we realize, wow, we didn't have, say, the water source was not sufficient from this location. Well, we didn't know that in the process that we're currently at. And so now that we know from an engineering standpoint, we know that's going to cost a little bit more. And so we're going to figure out how to value engineer that out of the project. Those are just a couple different scenarios.
All right, Leland, we'll come back. I want to bring up Brian Contino for a brief moment, particularly since the city board just passed the ordinance, 1.5 million of American Rescue Plan Act dollars for the micro home village, literally just minutes ago. Any questions about homelessness? Director Adcock, I see your hand up, and then we'll go to Director Miller.
My question was for Mr. Couch.
Okay, but for right now, does anyone have a question about homelessness? Director Miller?
Yes, Brian, appreciate what you're doing, and our chief homeless officer position has been filled. Tell me a little bit about that. What do you see that person doing? And at the end of the day, doesn't it just boil down to we need more shelters, more housing? This two-part question.
Yeah, so I'll start off with the chief homeless officer position has been filled with Matthew DeSalvo. He came to us from the Salvation Army just down the street from City Hall. And he's been a wealth of knowledge for the department and for the outsource or resource team that's going out and making contact with the individuals. His primary position is going to be helping us combine all the organizations that are out there to provide services for the unsheltered, and getting everyone into the same system so that way we can share information and get everyone the resources and housing that they need. And so he's going to be out there driving that catalyst for the city to kind of be that face to go out there and make those connections, making sure everybody's on the same page. And second question is, yes, we do need more shelters, and those are, you know, I know organizations are working at getting more beds, and as they are getting those beds, we are able to help put people in those locations.
Let me also ask, our relationship with now Metropolitan Housing Authority. Do you know how many units they have that are offline, or if they're trying to get more units available? And is our relationship with them better than it's been in the past?
I don't know how many units they have offline. I can get that information for you. But yes, our relationship with them is become very stable. We are working with them to, you know, get their units online, find new ways to get resources to the individuals that are already within metropolitan housing, working with them as they are streamlining their application process, making sure that our individuals that we are helping through that process are getting the correct information in, so that way they are seen in a faster time, so that way they're not, you know, trying to contact them, getting more information, and then losing their spot. So our current relationship with the Metropolitan Housing is very good.
That's good to know. And also, do you have any estimate on the number of unsheltered people that will be in Little Rock tonight? I mean, I know we do a time and point count, but any estimates as to tonight, how many people are unsheltered?
Tonight, I would probably say within the city of Little Rock, we're probably looking 400, and within Pulaski County, we're probably looking around 900 to 1,000.
All right, Leland, thank you. And we're grateful to the city board who just passed that $1.5 million for the micro home village from the American Rescue Plan Act. Director Adcock, you had a question for?
Yes, Leland, on page 4. What happened to scouting?
Can you repeat the question? What happened to?
Well, you list all the other items, but you left out scouting. And we are talking to Congressman Hill and other people about helping fund the scouting at Hyman, but on the page 4, on G, it doesn't list the scouting.
Yes, ma'am. That's the actual question that I received. I didn't write that. My answer is on the next page, on page 5 at the top, stating the Hyman master plan process. So these are from Director or Vice Mayor Webb.
He just answered the question of Vice Mayor Webb.
G is just the question that we received.
But we'll get you the answer on scouting, Director Adcock.
Scouting is still as part of the project of the master plan.
Okay, I would like to make sure it appears on these sheets, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Webb.
Thank you, Mayor Scott, and I apologize. I didn't flip to War Memorial quickly enough when it was brought up before, and just kind of
We got enough time. We got all the time for you.
Okay, we had the master plan that had War Memorial in it, and then right before COVID, we had the group, I can't remember the initials, but that met about Heinemann and War Memorial, and they came up with a lot of recommendations. And so basically, what was in the handout at the ward meetings was just kind of more of an idea, or these are hypothetical things that we might have in War Memorial, and that seems to be the reality, since we're now saying that we would have another master plan process to determine the specifics.
So,
and then it would be whatever would fit within that $14 million budget.
Yes, let me start at the beginning. I believe you were referring to the task force group, the R3 task force group.
Yes,
during that process, it was all volunteers, and myself actually as a park design manager, I believe at the time, I did a lot of conceptual renderings and concept layouts and all of that. We've also had other master plans for War Memorial. So what I thought would be beneficial for this was to actually have a conceptual plan that people could actually see the potential of a central park for War Memorial. I'm not saying that what is actually on that is actually going to fit within the whole 14 million. A lot of these plans look at the bigger picture, and then we would take the funding that we receive and factor that in. All the projects that I've ever been a part of at the city, we always come to the public and ask for input and go through a process. I wouldn't see this to be any different, but if that was the direction of this board, I'd be happy to consider a different direction.
Thank you.
We'll now go to Public Works.
Thank you.
Manish, if you'll come up. Manish, if you'll address some of Director Wyrick's questions. I believe it's on, starts on page.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. So
Nuts and bolts.
nuts and bolts. So the first question, Director Webb, that you had was, what is strategic infrastructure and what will that be allocated? Basically, strategic infrastructure is streets and drainage, sidewalks, signals, those kind of projects. It does not include any maintenance such as potholes or things as such. So it's capital projects.
And I think members of the board, just as I want to correct something. I think I said split 50-50. That's incorrect. As I shared with you a couple weeks ago, it was split 60-40, that 20 million. And you all have this document, and it's also online. But just so you're aware, we split it 60% from that 20 million. And so 12.75 million went to public safety, fleet, and then 8 million went to directly to street resurfacing, not into strategic infrastructure. So that's where Director Hines discussed talking about having a permanent resurfacing plan, and those dollars went there. Director Wyrick?
Thank you, Mayor. I think one of the problems that I have is keeping up with what we've talked about we're going to do in the past and the timing of it. I ran over some documents today, and here's one from 2023 that talks about the sales tax dollars and limited tax capital improvement bonds, and we've got streets on here. This is from the 2018 capital improvement and 2019 and 2021. And they're not going to be completed until third quarter of 2023 or third quarter of 2024, fourth quarter of 2023. It's really difficult to keep up with what we've approved, what's in the hopper to be done, and when it's going to be completed. And I know I've complained about not having enough money for infrastructure. And you said we're covered, we've got this, and we might have a lot of streets covered. But is there a document that reflects where we are by ward for what's been approved, when it's going to be completed, those kinds of things, so we know?
And we sent that out. We passed it out at the last. I'm pretty certain we did at your ward along with other wards, but we'll get that to you. We passed that out at the ward meetings from 2011 to date. And to answer your question, yes, we had that document. It was passed out during the community meetings. We'll get that resent out to each board member.
I think that would be helpful because as I looked at these two documents, they are both from 2023. There's a lot of street improvements that we've talked about that we're already got money for, but they're in the hopper to be done at some point in time, and a lot of them won't be completed till 2025. So I've got that question and trying to understand what.
Yeah, we'll get, Manish, if you'll just get Ward 7, because we've sent them out to each ward at each of those community meetings. We'll get that resent to you.
I don't recall getting that, but if I did, I apologize. But this just came to mind today as I was looking through the sales tax data.
Yeah, I think the only ward that did not get that document was actually Director Hines, because I believe Ward 5 was the first one, and then we started bringing them. So,
He
but
doesn't really need streets out there.
but yeah, every ward got that, and we'll get it resent to you.
Yeah, but anyway, that would be helpful, and, you know, when they're gonna hit. So that gets me to my question for today. So if we start funding these projects with this sales tax, what time frame are we looking at on completion? Are we looking at 4 or 5 years down the road? What sort of turnaround can we expect?
And it all depends, just like the previous sales tax. There were things still being completed from the 3/8 cent sales tax in 2022 and 2023. So,
There's some on this list
Yeah.
in 2025.
yeah, exactly. And that's the reason why is because we have to determine when we do our bonding, how we issue bonds. That's number one. Two, engineers got to engineer, contractors got to contract, and weather delays. So all of these projects will be done over the basically 10 years, some 12. And that's exactly what, again, so in 2011, we were still doing stuff in 2022 from the 2011 sales tax, so 11 years later, so.
And Mayor, if I may add, like also utility relocations and delays related to that also.
Yeah, utility.
Adds time to the projects.
So Director Wyrick, we'll be working for at least 10 to 12 years.
That's a good thing. That's work. But does it speak to the volume of resources that we have in Public Works and contractors in the area to get stuff done? Are we?
The answer would be yes, but we're always are going to be beholden on the market. I mean, no one's going to be able to give you a correct answer today with contractors' availability. I can tell you contractors are excited about it, and they're.
What about our staff availability?
Most of that will be contracted out, so won't a lot of that be staff.
But they've got to massage it. They've got to bid it. They've got to.
Oh, yes. I thought you were talking about the hard
right
costs.
Plan. Do we have the appropriate staff
Yes.
to take care of all that?
Yes, ma'am. We got the same staff that took care of the 2011 sales tax.
Yeah, and we're still working on it in 2025. So
Because the contractors and engineers that we contract with.
that's my point. Okay. The other question that I had is under item B, and these were not my questions. I think these are Kathy's questions.
Oh, they said it came from,
I'm not sure, but
that's what Emily shared with me. They would,
yeah.
There's
I
one
don't-
page that starts with Director Wyrick's
okay.
I'm sorry.
Your questions that you'd given me about Hyman Park are included in this packet,
Okay,
but
I
they're
think these
later.
are Kathy's, Director Webb's, Vice Mayor Webb's. Okay, and under B, they're very good questions, by the way. I couldn't have thought of them, but they're very appropriate to what we're looking at. It looks like we're working on a resurfacing map.
It's a pavement assessment map showing us the conditions, the current conditions of all our streets that we own and maintain.
Okay, and do we have a contractor doing that for us?
Yes, we have a consulting firm that's working on it, and there's two parts to it. One is where they go and get the condition mapped,
Right.
and that we're expecting that in early July. And then after that, the consultant's also going to help us do some planning as to how we can improve our streets, how we can continue to maintain our streets.
So this is July, so obviously it's not going to be this week, right?
It should be very soon. If not this week, it'll be early this month.
So will y'all have to massage it before you publish what you found, or will you be able to publish to us what you find from this assessment?
So once the consultant presents that to us, Public Works will have an opportunity to review it and give them our comments. And then the first thing that we'll have available to show to the board and to the residents is like the complete mapping of the entire city's street network. That's the first thing that'll be available, and hopefully we can do that by the end of this month.
By the end of the month, okay. All right, I think that would be interesting to see. I think that would give us an idea of where we actually need resurfacing as opposed to where they are. Okay, that's really all I had. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
While you're up there, I'll go ahead and ask another question, if that's okay, Mayor Scott. As you know, I'm a frequent emailer to you, in particular about missed garbage collection.
Yes, ma'am.
And I didn't really get an answer here in this question H. I know we are short every single morning when we start out. We do not have enough trucks to pick up the garbage.
That's true.
And I know we pay for those out of the solid waste enterprise fund, but is that fund adequate to cover the shortage of trucks that we have and what we anticipate having?
So under the current circumstances, we're doing okay. We have a lot of deferred maintenance needs. Hence, you're seeing some of these trucks breaking down, and our fleet division's helping us keeping up with those needs at the moment. However, we're also, making plans. We're looking at options to make some improvements in 2025. One of the things that we would like to explore is to improve efficiencies in the route pickup, so that there's fewer missed, garbage from residents. The other thing is also reviewing our rates. We might look at another rate study that would be needed in the near future for us to determine other ways to fund, those kind of improvements, buying newer vehicles and keeping up with the fleet.
Thank you.
Director Phillips?
Thank you, Mayor. I had to unmute. I think we're talking about the nuts and bolts, as Director Wyrick likes to call it. And this was one of my questions. So if you don't mind educating the audience and those watching online, as it relates to the permanency of the 5/8 of operating as it relates to infrastructure improvements. To me, that's a big deal. As I understand, it's the first time in the city has ever done that. So could you provide some context on that for our constituents?
Sure. So 5/8 of the sales tax revenue will be used for strategic improvements, like capital improvements. We're talking about streets and drainage and sidewalks, signals, those kind of improvements. Those will be capital improvements. And that is expected to sunset in 10 years. The remaining 3/8 is permanent funding for resurfacing, doing sidewalk improvements and things as such. And that's expected to be permanent, and that'll really help us plan our future maintenance strategy.
I want to give a shout out to Director Hines. I don't nearly do this enough. I know there was a point of contention for you as well as Director Webb as we had those discussions privately to get to that. And I think while, as Director Pierce would say, we got to resolve one issue before we can get to the other issue as we resolve some of the public safety. But this gives us a permanent funding stream for resurfacing and drainage in perpetuity. So that's a big deal, and kudos to members of the board. All right, well, now we'll go to, thank you, Manish.
Thank you.
We'll go to the final piece. So any questions about the Little Rock Port Authority and the economic development funding? Vice Mayor Webb?
I will reserve the right to have questions, and I'll send them to you tomorrow, Mayor, if that's okay.
Sure thing.
After I read this.
All right. Director Wyrick?
Thank you. You saw me looking for my button, didn't you? I did find a document that I got at the Ward 7 meeting, and it's listed kind of in a spreadsheet format as far as what projects have been done, and some are in design and bid and under construction. I was thinking of a map is what I was thinking of.
We can work on that for you.
Yeah.
All
And I do have this spreadsheet format for.
I knew you were there, and I look at you, you kept it too.
And there's also an interactive
It's
website.
important to me, but I think a map would be really descriptive.
Emily's going to share with you about it.
There's also a website that's relatively new that has this information on it that we'll share with you.
Oh, great, thank you. Yeah, but I do have it, so thank you, Mayor.
All right, so members of the board, it's now 8 o'clock. I never want us to be here. I don't even like meetings longer than an hour and a half, so it's now been 2 hours and 4 minutes. You guys got all this information. Please digest it. But one of the things I have not heard, and the city attorney did give me a little cover, and I'm grateful for him. We can always pass the ordinances to take it to the ballot, which is the 5H, 3H. We can discuss the resolution later. However, we need to kind of let the folks know from an education standpoint. But what I still haven't heard yet, and maybe I won't hear anything, and that's great. We've made changes based off of feedback from the residents and from you when we did the additional $20 million with a 60-40 split to resolve the public safety fleet issue, to add more $8 million to infrastructure, specifically on the permanent side with the 3/8 funding in perpetuity. So please, if you got any questions or you want to make some changes, let's discuss that. If you want to send that to me via email so we can get this on with you all so we can get it to the people if you want to have it. If you don't, then we all know the needs that we have and we won't pursue. But this has to be a team effort. I want to make sure of that. Director Compuris? Now, I got some final comments after that.
Okay, well, two things. This is a different subject. Is that okay?
Sure.
First of all, in the scheme of things, sometimes don't work very well. I want to tell you an incident where things really worked well. When we had the George Floyd protests, there were a group of demands generally in the public, and there was a sponsored group that the Chamber and 50 did, where they asked young people to come together and give a plan on how to improve the city. And when all the things came up, the Chamber and 50 said, what can we do to help? So one of the co-chairmen was Antoine. And I went to Antoine and I said, can you, instead of us trying to go out and reach out to the people, bring us back what people are saying that they want to have done? And they brought back suggestions, and there were 4 different groups formed that included people that were on the committee and the business community. And one of them was economic development. And Darren Williams was in charge of that, and I was on the committee. And that led to an idea of going to banks in town, including Darren's, and trying to get money for economic development. Now, it's a slow process, as I found out. Darren pledged money from his bank, and then we went to Simmons, and my cousin, George Macris, they've put in $1,200,000. So now there's over $2 million to do economic development in this community. And that is a positive event that occurred listening to people. And it required the young people that were there. Antoine had to bring the suggestions back. The business community had to be receptive to the idea that we needed to help. And then it took Darren and then my cousin to started putting money in, and hopefully other institutions will, so it starts helping. So that's one thing I wanted to just bring to everybody's attention, because that's a real success story. The second is that there is a young man named Jordan Tinsley, and who is working for the city and working for the Clintons, trying to do an energy district. And he has talked to, I think, Antoine. I know he's talked to the mayor, and he's trying to arrange a time that he can do a video presentation on why it's important. So I will get with Ashley and give her a time, and you can we'll put it out, and I hope people will come and listen because it's an important concept. We passed one for solar, right, that we've done, and then we're looking at that, and then I think we're also looking at some things at the landfill for using methane. So we'll get out a time, and I hope you avail yourself of going to listen to it. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Webb?
Thank you, Mayor Scott. And this is not for discussion, but just to throw this out, you are requesting that if we have suggested changes to spending categories, that we share those. And in the questions that I sent in, I did make some suggestions. And as you and I talked the last time, I made those suggestions to you. So I just wanted to note for everybody else as they have time to digest this, my suggestions are in there.
Yes, ma'am. All right. And I want to note that if there aren't any other suggestions, I think we have something. Clearly, we can always answer more questions, but the nuts and bolts of this is the money and what it's spent for. And seeing, as Director Webb has put in her stuff in writing, what her suggestions were, I'll culminate again, but if you guys don't have any more suggestions, I'll take into consideration Director Webb's suggestions, but if there aren't any more, we can start focusing on getting you guys an ordinance. You got any thoughts, Director Miller?
No, I've just, I appreciate, Mayor, your leadership in trying to get this to a head because I know time is of the essence. So just keep pushing.
Yes, sir.
Just keep pushing.
Director Pett?
And a lot of my questions that I had from constituents are bundled in with Vice Mayor Webb's, and I too haven't had a chance to look at this, but if I have any
Please call.
concerns or questions, I'll communicate directly with you.
Yes, ma'am. Director Wyatt? Director Adcock?
Not at this time.
Dr. Campuris had to go to the ER, so he had.
Okay. Director Hines, I know we've had a lot of communication.
Yeah, I still want to go look at it because I hadn't, other than when we got in here, hadn't had a chance to look at them. My afternoon is pretty busy, so I'll review them over the weekend and get with you on if any questions.
All right. And Director Lewis? And again, want to stress we're open to all suggestions. We're just trying to get it to a point so we can move forward and start getting a lot of the education and the visuals out so people can know what's going on. Everyone, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting adjourned.